What an incredible journey this has been so far, and we're just at the beginning of it. Art Online Fractured Daydream got revealed absolutely out of nowhere, raising a lot of questions as well as intrigue alongside a lot of hype that we have not seen for any SAO game for quite some time now. And finally last week we had the 3 beta periods for a few lucky chosen, and I was one of those few lucky chosen. I managed to get my hands on the game and had plenty of time to check every single available character out. And you know, as I always say, Dimps, the developers of SAO Fractured Daydream, they are the type of company where if you don't have expectations, they will gladly surprise you to no end. And once again, no exceptions, Dimps has proven their prowess once more with an incredibly fun game and a mostly smooth experience for a live game, alongside some rapid responses to feedback here and there, which is absolutely vital for this type of game. So, welcome SAO survivors to my beta impressions for Art Online Fractured Daydream. For those of you who just want a brief overview of the game, we'll do a little lightning round here. Most people seem to enjoy that one. And afterwards, we're gonna dive into the details of Fractured Daydream for those interested. As covered in a lot more detail in my All We Know About Art Online Fractured Daydream video, the main feature of the game is its 20-player co-op missions, which are basically dungeons with a boss at the very end, and its 20-player boss raid activities, which is a more tense boss arena fight. If you played Art Online Fatal Bullet's co-op dungeons and boss challenges, this is basically it, expanded into an entire multiplayer-oriented game, which is absolutely great, as the online, especially co-op, was the shining side of Fatal Bullet. And speaking of Fatal Bullet, this video was brought to you by my channel merch, spearheaded by the Lens Squad memes from that game, of course. You can find Lens Squad, 50k Klein, Angry Medina, SAO the First Day, and more on my Teespring page. Link is going to be down below in the description, and if you're a patron or a channel member, you can find additional discount codes on your respective feeds. Fractured Daydream expands that Fatal Bullet gun-based combat into all kinds of weapons-based combat in the same fast-paced, action-packed nature, and unlike previous SAO games, all characters feel completely unique with their movements, animations, and combat. The best example of this was the 2 ALO characters, Leafa and Oberon, available in the beta, both magic-based, sword-using fairies, but possess completely original movesets and skills, while also being completely different classes. And with 6 different classes to explore in the beta, the gameplay was a blast. Just pick your favorite character and enjoy the casual and chill co-op missions, or tackle the high-stakes raid boss mode, both of which grant you account XP that increases the level of drops you receive, and character XP that unlocks customization options for characters and increase their base stats for an outside of the game progression as well, on top of the instance-based awakening level of your character, which is the gameplay level of the character that starts at 1 in every single game. Overall, it was the most fun I had in a Art Online game, strictly on the gameplay side of things, and I cannot wait for the game to release later this year, likely fall according to Bandai Namco Western branches. There is going to be a single-player story side as well, but there are no further details on that front at the moment, and the focus is very much on the multiplayer co-op aspect. And if you ask me, I believe that's very much working in the game's favor, with the Gameverse as a narrative-driven format kinda being exhausted over the past 10 years, that it just feels good to pick up a fun game simply to play a fun game, rather than dealing with endless grind, lengthy and usually bloated story. Thank God Last Collection was always concise and to the point in the main campaign. Do all the side content that is hit or miss, because not doing them feels like money left on the table. With Fractured Daydream, we have a fun game that we can pick up simply to have fun, whether that's a nice and casual mission run or a more intense boss raid. But that's pretty much the lightning round impressions without details. If that's all you wanted, if you wanted to hear if it was fun or not, it was fun, and I hope you smash that like button before leaving. For the rest of you who want to know more, I'll be continuing with a detailed approach, and let's stay on the topic of gameplay, as that is the core aspect here. All 6 characters that were in the beta, each representing a class in-game, were immensely fun and always felt unique. I asked my followers which character they enjoyed playing as the most, and the answers were surprisingly varied, and I believe that was exactly what Dimps intended here. And to illustrate it, I think Brandon put it best as to why everyone had a different favorite character to play as. He said, "This is the game that actually makes you feel like you're the characters since they are all unique in their own ways." With every character having a unique style with a lot of variety, you simply get to pick whichever playstyle suits you best. For me, it was Argo, who had this incredibly nimble combat style that rewards you for getting behind the enemy for bonus damage. She didn't have the flashiest moveset like Kirito had, for example, but she had the most agile set that allowed me to quickly snap out of my combos when needed to evade, a double jump that complemented her dive attack, allowing me to jump behind the back of an enemy to get more hits and damage from that skill, the cartwheel attack that breezes past the enemies while damaging them, and the hard-hitting claw lunge. On top of all of that, I could go invis to sneak past enemies to prioritize objectives without confrontation like the tower activation, or prioritize revives on the field without getting interrupted. In comparison, there were those who loved Kirito's combat that ramped up the damage with a barrage of combos. There were those who loved Sinon, especially in boss raids with her ease of targeting the enemy weak spots and her burst damage potential. Leafa with her aerial combat was quite popular. It made her feel very safe against enemy attacks, most of which were ground pound based in the beta, and I stopped hearing complaints about her healing over time, which I can only imagine people were starting to realize that it wasn't a clutch heal ability like they're used to, but rather a sustained party regen. On that topic, we're bound to get clutch healers as well with other characters when the game releases. Leafa still had quite high combat potential as well, despite being a support class, keep that in mind. Oberon was a surprise favorite for many people. Aside from his animations being absolutely hilarious fun, his ranged AoE combat was incredibly satisfying, and with his button hold attacks being elemental magic, he was also able to cover a wide variety of elements all on his own to hit those enemy weaknesses, with the light attack hold producing an AoE darkness blast and the heavy attack hold leading to a piercing wind slash. Similarly, Agil, another low-profile character otherwise from the series, was a huge fan favorite, simply because with his large and tanky axe build, his attack reach was immense. With Argo and Kirito, I had to run into the enemy to have my slashes connect reliably, but Agil, he was able to just be relatively nearby, and his wide-ranging swings would still connect not just with the enemies in front of him, but also those behind him as well. Each character simply brings a distinct playstyle that goes beyond the classes they are given, which is just incredibly exciting considering we're gonna have over 20 characters on launch to choose from. The gameplay was smoother than Lost Song and Axel vs SAO games, as well as the sword combat that was featured in Fatal Bullet with the Photon swords. Particularly the sword combat has been tweaked significantly to make it more player-friendly to use compared to how I would describe the Photon Sword combat back in Fatal Bullet. A lot of the skills now have a small lunge towards a targeted enemy. Normal attacks do not feel as static, although you cannot exactly shut your brain off either. You need to often move yourself towards the enemy still. One issue I had was fighting the aerial enemies. I felt like they were moving around too much compared to the characters who do not have flight abilities. They need to position themselves and then jump towards the enemy. So on that front, I feel like a slight initial lunge to the base attack towards aerial targets that can benefit the combat a lot. I really like the fact that the different kinds of enemies appropriately require different approaches. Haha, what a shock. This was sadly felt less after they extremely buffed the player attack powers. I'll get to that in a second. But still, there was enough variety to keep things entertaining. With the floaty evil eyes, you're forced into close quarters as they have a shield in front of them, pretty much preventing Sinon from doing anything to them. The elemental golems themselves, they favor flight combat or trying to jump and attack in the air as much as possible with their constant ground pound attacks. The delinquents require you to chip away at them and dodge regularly while running for your dear life with their incessant and powerful attacks, as you will recognize them from Fatal Bullet. I'm pretty sure these guys caused a lot of people to drop one of the DLCs in that one room. The main problem in terms of combat I had was against larger enemies. In fact, the larger the enemy, the more frustrating it got. I think this is mainly a carryover effect from Fatal Bullet, but for example, the weak points of enemies as well as the movement / collision of large enemies, they do not quite suit the close range combat with your swords or axes or whatever. It's completely impossible to reliably hit the weak spots with sword combat, but incredibly easy to do so with ranged weapons. Now, if that is intentional, if that is a design choice, then I don't get to complain. That's a choice. But it does not quite feel intentional when the weak spot of the Skull Reaper is its gigantic head, and it is still impossible to hit as a weak spot with a sword when the thing is fully paralyzed lying still on the ground. This makes me think it is not entirely intentional. And secondly, again, I'm gonna take Skull Reaper as an example, the thing is so large that it creates a lot of additional problems with its collision. Now, I don't want to have the thing shrunk in size, that's not the point. The fight feels incredible with the huge Skull Reaper menacingly roaming around in the arena and, you know, threatening everyone with his huge attacks and all that kind of stuff. However, it does not particularly feel good when I'm constantly getting stuck under its legs, unable to jump or move out of the way. It also does not feel good that as a non-gun player, I got no clear targets to aim for. The lock-on notes for Skull Reaper is 1. Its head, which is completely out of reach for non-flight characters unless the boss is paralyzed. 2. Its chest, which is above ground level and is also the main default target of the enemy, so you need to constantly use jump attacks for the entire 20+ minute fight. 3. The middle of its tail, which I have no idea why anyone would target it at all. And 4, the end of its tail, same complaint as above. On top of this, because the Skull Reaper is so large but very thin, it has massive movements left and right, back and forth, but a very small thin hitbox, so that if the Skull Reaper is doing anything at all, you're very likely to miss your attacks as a result. I feel like, as an easy solution, some lock-on targets around the legs or somewhere in the lower body would alleviate a lot of these issues, and you know it is an issue when the game actually has an auto-targeting in place for the switch and the switch finisher mechanics that constantly whiff the Skull Reaper due to the mechanics being ground lunges, targeting its chest that is above the ground, so you end up just wheezing under its legs without hitting anything at all quite consistently. Alright, I talked a lot about the Skull Reaper, so why not use that to talk about the modes themselves? The game features 2 separate online modes, the Co-op Quest and the Raid Boss. Both are for 20 players, consisting of 5 parties of 4 players each. Personally, I really enjoyed the Co-op Quests a lot. They were the casual standard co-op missions. Each party starts in a personal map at level 1 Awakening and is given an objective to complete. As you defeat enemies and complete objectives, you earn XP to increase your Awakening rank to unlock your skills and get more powerful, and Coal, which is used to enhance your weapons and accessories outside of the game, as well as earning these green and red prisms, each increasing your HP and attack respectively by 0.1%. And don't underestimate them because they give you just 0.1%, they do accumulate quite fast later on. From chests around the map, you'll earn more XP and prisms, as well as passive perks. You can only have 1 benefit slotted, but you can freely change them as you come across better ones. Once you complete all objectives in your personal map, the teleport gate takes you to a much larger map where you'll start working together with the other parties. If you're lucky, you can come across golden minions which drop large amounts of coal, or varying levels of Ragu Rabbit that drop huge amounts of XP and prisms, as well as high tier passive perks. You can also find higher tier chests here for more rewards, with usually one golden chest with the best possible rewards hidden somewhere on the map. You're also given 3 objectives in this collective map, and it's usually 2 parties approaching from the western side and 3 parties approaching from the eastern side, taking out 1 objective each and then coming together in the middle for the final tower activating mission. And on that note, I think the tower activating mission is not communicated all that well to the player, and was the cause for people spending way too much time without realizing on this mission, that eventually prompted the player attack buff due to players not finishing the co-op quests in time. But overall, either some adjustments to the tower mission have to be made, or the story mode has to provide a proper tutorial once the game comes out for this specific mechanic. The mission is otherwise very simple. You need to interact with the tower to increase the progress, while others handle the enemies. Don't let them reach to you, don't let them reach to the crystal in the middle. If you get hit while interacting with the tower, you're basically interrupted and have to interact again with the console. And if enemies attack the central crystal, you start losing progress instead based on the damage they are doing. The main issue I saw in my time in 4 or 5 dozen run-throughs of this mission is that multiple people interacting with the consoles either does not speed up the progress at all, or does it in such a negligible amount that half a dozen people interacting with the crystal thingy does not feel any different than a single person interacting with it. And as a result of this, when a dozen people think they are contributing by interacting and barely anyone is fighting the enemies as a result, you often get overrun by the enemies and can't progress, or even lose your entire progress due to the amount of AoE damage those mobs are doing. In my opinion, the change to be made for this specific mission, it is quite clear. Either allow the progress to speed up noticeably if multiple people are interacting with the console, or just remove the additional consoles around the crystal in order to not encourage multiple people to interact at the same time, causing them to think they are contributing when they are not. Alternatively, it may be a good idea to tie the enemy spawns to the progress bar itself rather than having them spawn endlessly on a timer, depending on what kind of a fixing approach is chosen internally. Especially when you're surrounded by multiple delinquents, it's really not a fun challenge. They are already too tanky, they are too fast, and they hit too hard, so 3 of them just stomping around without any control while multiple golems are ground pounding everywhere with large AoEs, it can get a little too much. And I don't think powering players up was the solution here, because of how it affected the next phase of the co-op mission. Once you activate the towers, the final teleport gate activates as well and takes you to the boss room, where Ilfang the Kobold Lord waited for you in the beta. The boss fight was a really nice challenge in the first day of the beta. Everyone just scrambling around the map, having to manage the ads on time before getting overrun, dealing and countering the attacks of Ilfang, and in the last HP bar of Ilfang, he changes his weapons the same way as in canon, as there are new patterns to respond to now. On that first day, it really was an intense and engaging fight that lasted around 7 to 8 minutes. However, starting with the next day of beta, having the player attacks powered up due to players not finishing the mission in time because they were failing at the tower activation quest previously and running out of time at the end, the boss fight ended up showing just how overtuned the buff was, which led to the intense 7 to 8 minute fight of attrition. It turned into a 2-minute breeze. It was so absurd that Ilfang could not even swap his weapons in time because the final health bar was just burned through so fast before he could even enter the animation to swap his weapons. As a short-term solution to speed up the mission in a limited time beta, I understand and sympathize with the increase of attack power to speed things up, but I truly hope they properly look at the tower activation balancing and not mess with the attack power. In my opinion, the attack power was already at a great sweet spot in the first day of the beta. Now, moving on from the co-op quests, the other mode is the boss raid. Again, 20 players, 5 parties of 4, which puts you directly into a large boss arena. Our enemy in the beta was the Skull Reaper. The awakening rank functions just the same. As enemies spawn into the arena, you defeat them and earn XP, coal and prisms. These only happen at predetermined moments in the early fight, but some players found out that you can simply over level a bit early on if you do not take out enemy spawning portals and just take care of the enemies instead for their drops. Now, I'm not sure how popular that strat was or how necessary it was in the first place. However, despite the increase of attack power, the final third phase of the boss raid was still very much challenging. Now, the raid boss is separated into these 3 phases and you receive a new time limit for each phase. Your timed goal is taking out 2 health bars of the boss within 10 minutes for a total of 6 bars. The first 2 are a breeze, however the third phase with the 5th and 6th bar, it really ups the intensity with the attack patterns of the Skull Reaper, as well as the enemy spawns no longer being predetermined moments in the fight, but rather on a relatively short timer, allowing enemies to easily overrun you if left unchecked. So your team really needs to be on point dealing with the ads, while allowing your gun users clear shots at the Skull Reaper's head, all the while being actively on the lookout for the counter mechanic that requires over half a dozen players to get in position for a special counter attack to prevent the boss from having its large scale attack and pile onto its down gauge for a lengthy DPS opportunity. Overall, if you're looking for a more intense experience, you'll likely be heading into the boss raids, and if you want a more chill and casual run, co-op quests will likely be your choice. Both are equally fun at what they aim to do. The large enemies just need their collision issues solved so that fights are a bit more reliable, consistent, that's it. Now, within the gameplay, I talked about the awakening level. That's your instance-based level that starts from 1 in each run. But outside of the game, you have your account level and your character level. Account level is your global rank that dictates the level of weapons and accessories that drop. The higher the level of a weapon or accessory, the higher their stat bonuses. Character level is unique to every single character. As you rank up a character, their base stats will increase and you will unlock additional cosmetic items or rewards for the characters, such as a shiny new claw for Argo or Phodon swords for Kirito. Speaking of equipments, the rarity and perk system carries over from Fatal Bullet. While the level of an equipment dictates its base stats, the rarity of an equipment dictates how many additional perks it has. A common weapon can have a single perk, while a legendary weapon will have 4 perks, one of which a legendary perk, for example, that enhances a specific skill your character has. However, I'm hoping they refine the perk pools a bit, at least slightly. For example, getting an accessory for Sinon, who is a full-on gun-based character, with a melee attack damage up perk, it's infuriating, I have no other words for it. When her main weapon is a sniper and her secondary weapon is an SMG, with none of her skills even featuring anything related to melee. The perk pool is already vast in this game, so a little bit more moderation and adjustments here to at least trim out the absolute dead options, it would be very welcome. In the beta, we could also enhance equipment, however, enhancing would only increase the base stat of the equipment and have no effect on the perks. The perks themselves, they do come with perk levels on them, with each level increasing effectiveness of course, so I'm hoping the full game has a mechanic that allows us to enhance the perk levels themselves too. As for the cosmetics, the beta itself has quite a nice amount of variety in the first place, as well as additional cosmetic drops from bosses as very rare rewards, like the Skull Reaper dropping a Skull Reaper hat, while Ilfang dropping a wizard hat or a Sinon's cat tail. Having cosmetic drops to chase from bosses, great choice, good job, and I'm looking forward to more of them in the game. However, one minor complaint about the cosmetics is that it appears we cannot paint the cosmetic items. We have a black coat for Kirito and a separate item, the same one but in blue, which indicates the full game likely won't have a die mechanic either. It's a shame, and it's something I hope they reconsider. While I personally don't care for shiny or weird colors, I know a great amount of people love the option, so it should definitely be on the map in my opinion for a large portion of the fanbase. But that is pretty much all the key aspects that relate to the game. There are some smaller notes that I made when playing the beta over here. The lock-on is slightly annoying. The target switching appears to be based on the character's vision rather than the player's vision, so even if you see an enemy in your camera behind your character or in your peripheral vision on the edge of the camera, you won't be able to lock onto it because it's not actually in the vision of the character itself. I think that can be changed to the game camera itself. Enemy elemental weaknesses, they're not stated anywhere in the game, requiring you to experiment and then memorize them. This is an unnecessary obstacle, as you cannot change your weapon after loading into a game anyways, especially in the full game where there'll be more than a single quest and more than a single raid boss. Just simply tell us which weaknesses are present in the map we are loading into, so we can simply wield the respective weapon according to our preferences, whether we want to be effective against certain mobs or against the boss. Leave that to us, but tell us what to expect in the map. Even Pokemon gave up and are now showing the weaknesses in the attack menu after you encounter the Pokemon once. Now, the existence of a ping system, that is very appreciated, but it feels terrible on consoles. I know this isn't particularly an issue of Fractured Daydream, this is an industry-wide problem. Location ping systems, they are more precision things that don't really work without a mouse and keyboard properly. But I would welcome any kind of creative solution if they can think of one. Pings automatically snapping to key elements, for example, within your vision could be a viable choice here. Stage geometry can be mildly annoying. The constant rubble and rocks on the ground making characters just snap and jitter constantly up and down, and changing the character's smooth run speed, mildly annoying. Not being able to reasonably gauge what slope you can actually walk up on and what slope you'll slide on is mildly annoying. In fact, both of these issues existed back in Fatal Bullet 2 and it was mildly annoying back there as well. It's not particularly an issue per se, but I guess I mentioned it is mildly annoying enough times already in this paragraph. Now, this bullet point is more of a warning for you, the player. The minimap can be misleading a bit, but you can actually explore a lot of the map. You don't need to stay on the paths themselves. Look for the different color grading on the minimap. As long as the map is filled with a color, you can step on and explore that place. And especially in the main map where all the parties are coming together, you're highly encouraged to explore with golden chests lying around and ragu rabbits spawning in unexpected places within the forests. Character interactions, they're absolutely great. It's a huge shame they only happen once when you spawn into the map initially. Please add more of these interactions. Maybe, you know, something like one with a party member when you first spawn into the individual map as it is right now, then a second one with a character from a different party when you enter the main map, and then another one, a third one, with multiple characters interacting when you enter the boss room, you know, just reacting to the boss. For those later events like confronting the boss or doing a mission, there are single lines from the character you are using at that moment, but I feel like not having more interactions between the cast members is kind of a huge missed opportunity here. Just as an example on the top of my mind, when entering the boss room with Ilfang, Kirito and Agil start talking with each other, strategizing against the boss, while my Argo comes over and tells them not to forget reading her guidebook. Things along those lines. Give us more group banter in that sense. Now, an important point in my opinion, I had issues with the matchmaking speed in this game. Believe it or not, it was too fast, very fast, that led to players loading into a game in 30 seconds, but only with 7 or 8 players out of the available 20. This was addressed in the final day of the game. The developers relaxed the timing requirements by an additional minute, and often I found myself with lobbies of 15 players, once even getting a 19-player lobby. So I'm hoping those settings are kept for the full release too. When a single game takes 20 plus minutes, I can spend an additional minute in matchmaking without any issues to have a fuller lobby. But one issue I have with matchmaking, or rather inviting others to your party, is the lack of information being provided when an error occurs, particularly when inviting people to your party in this case. At first, I thought crossplay was simply disabled for the beta, but later figured out that you couldn't reliably invite people from different regions. I simply did not know what was going on because the game never told me anything when I was sending invites to the other people. Similarly, when someone, for example, on PlayStation had their privacy setting to receive invites only from PSN friends, it took us multiple minutes to figure out why I couldn't send invites from my PlayStation to someone else's PlayStation that were in my in-game friends list, because I would invite them but they had never received the invite. Turns out, if you're on the same platform, the game just defaults to the platform-based invites of the system. So when I was playing on my PlayStation and inviting another PlayStation player who was not in my PSN friends, because the invite was not an in-game invite but a PlayStation invite, they simply were not receiving it because we were not friends. There simply is no reliable feedback to the players in the menus as to what is really happening in the background, and it leads to a lot of confusion on this front. I hope this is addressed in a better way. I'm also not a fan of crossplay invites just showing us a huge pop-up in my main screen blocking everything else. I'm also not a fan of not being able to reply to people in any way to let them know I'm currently in a lobby and will join them afterwards. For a game that advertises its multiplayer as its main offering, we desperately need better multiplayer communication options and coordination options, both in-platform and cross-platform. And last but not least, I'd love to have a sign in the multiplayer lobby if someone is editing their character equipment or not. Too many times I accidentally got yanked into the game while I was in my character menu because our party leader literally had no way of knowing I was trying to edit my characters at that moment. The game already has a similar thing. If your party members are still in the results screen of the previous game, they will appear grayed out in the lobby. Something similar should absolutely be implemented for players who are in other parts of the menu while staying in the lobby to avoid forcefully getting pulled into a game when doing other stuff. And yes, we know the AI is terrible at reviving you. Do not worry on that front. The devs are aware of the issue and they have actually pinpointed the cause for the behavior of the AI and will be fixing it for the full release. They just couldn't immediately fix it during the beta period. But that's pretty much everything I have on Art Online Fractured Daydream. Incredibly enjoyable experience all around with minor kinks here and there to iron out, and once that happens, we'll have ourselves a solid game with already a lot of fun to be had based on the beta. For a game that came completely out of nowhere, this could not have gone any better. And it has been a long time since I saw so many people from all kinds of places so excited for an SAO game across the board, and I hope it continues that way. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for more Art Online content. If you have questions or things you're curious about not covered in the video, ask them down below in the comments. My throat is killing me after recording this entire thing, so huge thanks to my patrons and channel members as always, and until next time, stay cool.